Great. So let's kind of get into Unit 2 right here. Now, URL parameters are actually data that you can pass to your own pages. And if you think about what you've done last week, you've uploaded a photograph, and you've made the photograph load, and some of the important pieces of data associated with that image are the name of the image, right? The name of the image becomes a URL in itself once you put it up in the cloud. So having the name of the image is a really valuable piece of information. When you look at a Craigslist, let's look at a Craigslist. Craigslist is kind of a good example. Oh, right, let's look at arts and crafts. No, baby and kid. Aviation for sale. Let's look at aviation for sale. A $49,000 plane is marketed via Craigslist. That's pretty cool. There's a $17,000 plane. Do you ever wonder what a plane costs? Guys, girls, $17,000. You could get like a Honda Civic for more than a plane. Come on, think about it. But imagine, what you guys are doing is extremely similar to Craigslist. And in the past, I've kind of encouraged young people to think of what a cool headset. You guys need to wear a headset to class. Forget just having a phone. Having a headset to talk into your phone, that's the next step. But if you think about how this page is composed, really it's a query upon a database. The database is rendering results, and the results are being transformed into these little boxes. Now, how do you get to an image? For example, here's the image. Awesome headset, I open the image in a new tab. Great. Now, you guys are doing exactly what Craigslist is doing, in that your image has a name and then it has a URL by virtue of it having a name. Now, the reason why and that's the name of that image, and if I were to download it, it would have that URL. Now, the reason why I'm getting into this is because you guys are able to upload photographs at this point. But let me ask you, is that really enough? You guys know that there are a lot of facts associated with that picture. Where was it taken? Who took it? What time of day? What is it about? What's a little fun bit of text that can associate the image? Really, web development is all about words, and it's about images. And when you put those two things together, you have billion-dollar enterprises. We were just talking about Facebook a minute ago and all the hot water that they find the fake hot water that they find themselves in. Images and text have a lot of cultural power at this point. And so if I were to give you guys the ability to upload images, that's good, but ultimately you'd want to describe the image. What's inside the image? Maybe you'd create some machine learning to say, well, is this image similar to other images? Does this image have cultural relevance? Can we locate people and find things of interest to them if we can group images together? Very important. I think everybody knows, images.google.com. I know you guys have probably stolen some images from here. Let's go. Let's go truck camper. Are you guys into truck campers? Okay, good for you. Mira, where is the truck camper in your life?
I don't know.
Think about tonight. Think about truck. Think about this. See that? Look at that. It has an awning. Probably has a stove. What I hear is that your generation is reinventing the camper. It's not really a truck camper. It's a truck glamper. Right? You guys are making this work. I think when I was a young person, I think just having a backpack was a big deal. You guys are like, oh no. We got to have a truck with a camper on it. So you guys are reinventing that. I'm proud of you guys. And if you guys haven't done it yet, you might want to look into it. But here is Google's effort to try to agglomerate or gather the images on the web. And I'm sure if I were to go and try to develop knowledge about this thing, I would go first to Google. Google is really, it's building up a statistical map of content as it exists across the internet. So what I'm partly looking for is I want you guys to be able to upload an image. Then I want you guys to associate some data with that image. But that means that we have to build up databases, and we have to securely put data, update data, delete data, adjust data, create data within those databases. And we're going to do that next week. But what I want to give you guys is the ability to move data within your site between one page and another. And that skill, good friends, is called URL parameters. And what I want to do, and let me just give a quick demo. I'm going to say, hi, I like truck campers. Or this image here is all about truck campers. People, get fired up. And what I want to do is the moment I touch this button, I want you to watch this URL. Ready? Go. Okay. Now what I did is I went to another page. I navigated to another page using window.location. So I went to destination URL reader, and then I embedded or encoded these values into the URL bar, and then I sent them to the next page. Does that make sense? I'm creating the beginnings of a workflow. So let's go through that one more time. Hi, this link is all about us and truck glampers. Awesome. Now, press me to push our URL parameters to the destination. So when I show up, that link has been enriched with my words. And I'm going to redo this. I'm going to say, hi, this is, and I'm going to send, hi, this is. It's going to appear in the next page. And this may seem like something really small, and it is small, but hi, this is something that your pages can pass so that your pages can collaborate. One page can collect a lot of data, and then it can send it to the next page to amass more data. Maybe you guys want to change the data. And maybe it needs to be passed to another page where it can be changed again. But what your pages can do is, before we put that data back into the cloud, we can work with it a little bit. Maybe the customer gets the opportunity to perfect, adjust, and make the data exactly the way it needs to be before we ultimately upload it to a database. And what if we want to make a multi-stage process where a person moves through 2 or 3 pages? Well, maybe if they make some data on one page, that data can move to the next page and then to the next page, and then we finish. And this is how many people use the web. Like, for example, let's say you guys are applying for a home loan, right? And they say, okay, on this page, let's talk about your job. And next page, let's talk about the house that you're looking for. And the next page, let's talk a little bit about your personal information. Let's say you're doing, $500 billion in loans for a company, such as, this is the home lending industry. Well, having a workflow where you move data from one page to the next is a part of the way that we get things done. Now, this is something that you guys are going to crush. You're going to do this really well. But here's where I begin. I want to gather my data here, and then I'm going to press on that button, and I'm going to send all that data to the next page. Now, white space is interpreted a little differently. White space looks like this. And so that space actually is a character. White space is a character too. It's that Unicode 20. Now I'm just keeping it really simple, but this URL, I just wanted to show that off right here. But now I'm effectively passing data back and forth. So the customer has the ability to make the data exactly what it is before I do an expensive round trip back to my servers. And that means I can do as much work as possible back with the website, with the user, and then once they finish, they can send value data. So I want to get you busy on this week before we go big on clouds again, rage on the cloud again next week. And the URL parameter is a way to make your website professional, and then you guys are going to layer on the cloud. So let's talk about the source code. All right, so that first page, and I wonder if we can just load up the, let's just inspect this page. One of my favorite. I've taken a lot of the Amazon Web Services out of it. That's okay, we're going to put it in later. But I just want to show you, I want to isolate these skills. And so this is how you make an input button. That's how you code an input. That's how you make a box. And I say, now this is the text associated with it. Now you notice I put an ID on it. That one's called K. That one's called A. That one's called V. And I put it all within a div. The div is a box that has a height, width, margin, padding. It has maybe a font type used within it. I can change background. There's maybe about 30 or 40 parameters that I can adjust with a div. And a div is what makes web pages the way they are, the way they look and feel. So they're called divs or dividers. And then I have another div right there where I put this button. And all you do is you got an input box and you got a button. And the ID button has this ID on it. Okay, so I've laid out the page. That's my HTML. And let me compact these divs. Now I have a little JavaScript. Now what I tried to do this morning, I was like the serious guy in Starbucks today, you know, like tapping away maniacally at a Starbucks. And I want to get our JavaScript as simple and as clear as possible. And I want to get rid of any comments or any of the real work that's associated with building up an app, where there's some errors and you massage the errors out eventually. So not for 1 second I want for you guys to believe that code looks like this. Code only looks like this once the battle is won, and we're going to clean it up and make it look professional, easy to read. Code is a big mess up until the last minute. So I don't want you to think that code needs to be neat. Mess is better for you right now. But I think there's a certain piece of code that matters. So let's go through this. Now, getElementById is a huge piece of what we do here. GetElementById is kind of the sacred ground for JavaScript because it means that JavaScript can reach out and grab a part of the web page and control that part of the website. So it can flood it with text, it can put an image there, it can set up an embed, and so all of the cloud or data interactions that happen within the script can reach out and become a part of what the user sees when we use that getElementById. So that's a big piece of the web that I want to talk about more as you guys develop, right? So what I want is I say, okay, grab the push URL params button, and when you click it, run this code. Run the prep URL function. And what I want to do is I want to define a variable k, a, and v depending upon the k, a, and v inputs. I don't know why they're called k, a, and v. Back on the page. I usually call everything L, so just be glad they're not called L. L for limit makes its way into my code. Everything's L. But for you guys, it's K, A, and V. So cav, grab the value in the K input, grab the value in the A input, grab the value in the V input, right? Here, let's kind of show that in motion. K, A, and V. Grab those inputs. And then let's form a new URL called end, our endpoint, based on this new page called Destination URL Reader. We're going to go to Destination URL Reader. And we're going to send them K, A, and V. Now, I could send it to the cloud. That would be fine. But it would create a lot more work and it would be more expensive for your corporation. It's much cheaper to keep data on the client side, working with the user for a little while. And then when the client is satisfied, then we save it or we throw it back to our cloud. Okay. So notice I'm using this and I'm using what's called a search or a query parameter. So send all that to destination URL, destination URL reader, where value 1 is equal to K and value 2 is equal to A and value 3 is equal to V. and then change the direction or change the location of the web page to hrefn. Now, does this look familiar to you guys? Window location href. You all are Studley, and you young ladies are Studley-ettes. You guys are all studs because you can do redirection, and you know you can do that with one line of code. That's a big deal. Your users will appreciate the ease that you've created. But you must tell the web page where it is to go, okay? So let's load some URL parameters. Great, so let's move back. So really what's happening is I'm saying param1, param2, param3. Then when I push that, I'm going to trigger that push URL params. Now that's a very good example about how you code what's called an event and build event-driven web pages. Can you guys say event-driven web page? You can't do it unless you say it.
Event-driven web page.
Good job. Event-driven web page. And it means now there are a lot of events. There's not just on click. There's on hover. There's all sorts of on events that we can build in to make this web page as interesting as you want. Okay, so we're going to go to that new page. Now, this new page is a totally different block of code is going on here. What we have to do is we have to take this URL. Now, look at that messy URL. What a nightmare. Here's that search begins, and value 1 is param, and value 2 is equal to p2, and value 3 is equal to p3. So have you ever loaded up Gmail, or have you ever loaded up a web page and the URL is just going nuts? The URL is just super busy. That's what's happening. URL parameters are moving across the various pages. This is very common. I got very interested in URL parameters. It's very common when you look at webmail, like Gmail, Hotmail, because the web address is so pregnant with data, it makes you wonder why the provider has made the URL so interesting. And it's because there are all sorts of variables that are being passed throughout your website. Let me say to you guys, if you guys can make variables out of data, you've won the battle, because you all are good at arithmetic. You all are good at common sense. You're good at logic, right? If only life could be made into some arithmetic rules, we will win that ballgame if we can do arithmetic. But the challenge is moving data into variables. And then, if much like Neolithic hunters, backing your game into a position where you can subdue it and make value out of it. That is the challenge. So what you've done is you've moved these values very well over the internet. And now as you load this page, I can work with that data. So let's use that example, and let's talk about how we make that workflow. Firstly, I really like to use the console. If you see me using console.log with some parentheses in a web page, what I'm doing is I'm trying to figure out the value of certain variables before I move it to the next stage in the process. Let me say this, fellas, programming will make you into a good cook. Like eventually you will become valued as a household member because of your interest in cooking. Programming will not make you popular as a dad. Does that make sense? Cooking is what will make you popular as a dad. Your little children will appreciate the fact that you are producing pancakes. But let's say that cooking as well as programming is a multi-stage process. You're always using the outcome of one activity as input to the next activity. And my thoughts are, this is an excellent training for you, whether you go into programming or not. So console.log helps for me to know what one stage of the process is doing before I begin the next. So let's get involved with that code. Now you recognize these. These are inputs, inputs, inputs. And I have a similar input, K, A, and V, on the other side of the transaction so that I know that my values have landed, right? And so what I have is an output where I'm going to put, called output, where I'm going to put the URL just so I can study it. And I've tried to keep my script somewhat compact, but there's more happening on the second page. So the first thing I do is I use the window location href as a URL initially. And I want to show that off in the console. You can see the console, that's the URL. And it's a good example of console. And then what I want to do is I want to grab that URL and I want to send it to breakup URL parameters. And so breakup URL parameters is below here. Breakup URL parameters, and I think I'll just go over here. This will present itself a little nicer. Breakup URL parameters is an important first step where we're going to define what's called the search. And the search is everything that's after the question mark. And what I need to do is I need to break down this value pair, key value pair statement so that I can create variables. So what I want to do is I want to find the search value, and I do that by running breakup URL parameters. And so what I do is I create a link, and then within that link I take apart its host name, the port, whether it's HTTP or whatever protocol, the path name and the protocol. And then I run the links, the search, or this part. Sorry, that's complex, but I run the search part through MapMaker. And MapMaker will break apart, using search.split, everything into key value pairs. And so I return what's called a map of the search values. And I could go through this a bit more, but I just want to talk about what I need to talk about right now. That will break up the search into value 1, 2, and 3. So it means that, well, what does value 1 equal? What does value 2 equal? What does value 3 equal? This page works like a function, and that you can send a function data, and the function will know what to do once it receives those parameters, right? So this page is prepared to interpret 3 different values at this point. Now I can show off what the URL was, which is what I'm doing right here. I'm showing off the URL. And then what I'm ultimately doing is I'm taking the value of 1, 2, and 3, and I'm putting it into K, A, and V. K, A, and V. So you've seen a full workflow where we originate data here. And let's say that this is going to be K, A, and V. And we're going to move that. So we have K, A, and V now. So it's very reliable. Now what this means is that a person could maybe upload a photograph on one page, and that is sacred. You have the URL of the photograph, you have their Facebook user ID, you maybe have the time that it was uploaded, maybe you have the location, and then you can bring them to another page where maybe they can make a comment on that image, or maybe they can change some of the data related to that photograph. Maybe they can replace that image, right? We find ourselves doing this a lot on the net, where images are why things succeed. And from there, we can branch out and create a number of pages that are associated with that image. Okay, so URL parameters are big. So what I want to do, and I want to save time for people to ask some questions, is I want to set up some goals today where you're either working by yourself or in teams to take the origin and destination files. Remember, this is destination, and that's origin. Then I want you to create 1 page per team member. So if you have 4 people, create 1 page per person. And on each page, integrate the ability to read URL parameters from a source page. Then output the values of each URL parameter into a set of inputs or on the console. So take the inputs, move them into these boxes. When you get to the next page, they should show up in these boxes. Then integrate the origin code into page 2, into the photo upload page, to pass each page the Facebook ID of the person logged in and the name of the photo. Now, page 2 is where you first get the name of the photo, and you might get their Facebook user ID too. So take those 2 pieces of information and pass it to the second page. You'll need 1 link per team member page on page 2, sending the same links to each page. So it's very similar to what you did in the first week, where you have 1 page that links to everybody else's work, right? And then it's going to send the photograph's name and the Facebook ID to everybody else's page. And the group project is to establish 1 page that updates some facts about the photo, gets current facts about the photo, deletes the photo and the current facts about it, and establishes a navigational element that is consistent across all pages. So somebody should do the update page, someone should do a get page, someone should do a delete page, right? And you should be able to pass the photograph's name and the Facebook ID from the upload page to those other pages. Okay, and I just want to put this up so people can begin to ask questions if you don't get it at first. But here, do this. Make sure that you go up to GitHub, download origin and destination, and play around with it. Just fool around with it a little bit and run the inspect so you can see how it's doing and what it's doing. And then take a look at the assignment and begin to think, how can I move this source code and interpret it into my own pages? Okay, you've been doing good, doing real good. So take a little break and let's begin to try it.